Alright, so before we begin what we're doing today, we need to make sure that we have our welcome work done. I'm not even going to fuss with doing the first one because, again, by now we should be stellar at finding the mean. You add up all the numbers, divide by how many numbers there are. So, if I add up, now it says find the mean absolute deviation. So we have a nice little table here, okay? Here's our original 6 numbers. So if I take these 6 numbers and I find the mean, I find that the mean is 9, okay? So then it says distance from mean. So how far is 7 to 9? 2. 6 to 9, 3. 17 to 9, 8. 8 to 9, 1. 7 to 9, 2. 9 to 9, 0. Here's my extra 9. Alright, now it says mean absolute deviation. So basically we're going to take this column right here and we're going to find the mean. So add up all the numbers and divide by how many numbers there are. So if I add them all up, and then there are 6 numbers, I'm going to end up with 16 over 6 numbers, which is about 2.6 repeating, or 2.7 if you round it to the nearest tenth. Make sure I get your welcome work. Okay, so now you should have the packet for today. Basically, what we're looking at is the best way to choose data points. If you were to do a survey, making sure that you're getting data that is meaningful. Sometimes, like when we were doing our Shark Tank, y'all would ask questions that wouldn't necessarily give the answer if we had the full story, and may or may not be the full school's perspective because it's not all the students, okay? So the first one says, every year a large school district holds a spelling bee. This year 400 students have entered the spelling bee. You want to learn about the mean age of students who enter the spelling bee. So what is the population that is interest to you? If we're looking at a large school district, are we looking at every single student in the school district? Or do we care about those who are doing the spelling bee? We care about those who are doing the spelling bee. So this is going to be the 400 students who enter the spelling bee. Pause it if you need to. Make sure you get that down and then come back to it. Alright, if you wanted to do a census of this population, from how many students would you need to collect data? So census is just telling us about every single person. So the United States does this every few years or so to figure out who's in the country and how old everybody is, how many children people have, all that stuff. That's how they get all that data about our country, okay? So ideally, we would want to know about all 400 students, okay? Realistically, again, I said the United States doesn't do this every year because it's a lot of work to get all that information, put it together. It's very difficult to do quickly, okay? So even 400 would be a lot. So you're saying out of this 400, we're going to take 20 random kids. How could we randomly select 20 students? Would it make sense to take the first 20 kids off the list? Would it make sense to take the 20 last kids off the list? Would it make sense to pick only, do it for females, or do it only for males, or a certain race? That's not going to tell you what you want to know. So the best way to keep this anonymous and get your best data is basically going to be, let's number the students and randomly select 20 people. Could you end up with all girls? Yes, but it's a lot less likely. Could you end up with all kids from the same grade level? Yes, but again, it's not as likely. Okay? So the next one. 40 students belong to the robotics club at some middle school. These are their ages. So this is just numbering the students, 1 through 40, right? And then here's their ages. Oh, there's a 15-year-old. I missed that on the next page. I'll get that. Hold on. Okay? So looking at that same data, I'm going to add that 15 here real fast. All right? Looking at the same data. If they want us to pull the 6 students, you see I have 11, 12, 13, and 14, and 15-year-olds, right? That's the ages of the people who are in this club. If I pull the first 6 students, does that give me a good age range? No, it doesn't. Okay? So that's why we have to make sure, again, we choose a good way to make sure everyone is represented. I don't know, since there's 5 age groups, if you want to pick one from each, doesn't matter which number they are, randomly, and then go from there with a 6th one. Okay? Alright, this last one isn't on your packet, isn't in your packet, but just help me answer it. So, principal at North Central wants to get new equipment for the PE classes, but isn't sure what way is best to spend the money. They decide to take a survey. Which of the following would be the best group to survey? The science teachers, 9th grade students, PE teachers, or students in Algebra 1? Again, think about, who is this for? What are we trying to accomplish with this survey? We're trying to figure out the PE equipment. Who's going to know that best? The 9th graders? The science teachers? The students in Algebra 1, that's a math class? Or the PE teachers, the teachers who are actually teaching the class every single day? Probably the PE teachers. Okay? It's not a lot, it's just you got to have your critical thinking cap on. Okay? Make sure that you keep going through the module and make sure that you remember how to do mean, median, mode, and range, and we'll take a quiz here shortly.